Welcome to The Explainer. You know, when you're trying to build something, whether it's a house or an argument, sometimes one tool just doesn't cut it. Well, today we're going to dive into a really powerful research approach called mixed methods. It's all about combining different techniques to build a much clearer picture.
Let's start with a little analogy here. Imagine you're an architect. Would you ever try to design a house with only a structural blueprint or, on the other hand, only an interior design plan? No way, right? You absolutely need both to create a space that's not just going to stand up, but is also a place you'd actually want to live in.
And research, well, it works pretty much the same way. Quantitative data, that's all the numbers, that's our blueprint. It gives us the structure. But it's the qualitative data, the stories, the context. That's the interior design. If you only use one, you're always going to be missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
So here's the plan for our explainer today. First, we'll talk about why we even need mixed methods. Then we'll get into the three big design types, sequential, convergent, and nested. And we'll wrap it all up by figuring out how you can choose the right blueprint for your own work.
All right, so what is this approach really all about? At its heart, it's about combining the what, which we get from all that numerical data, with the why, that we can only get from real human stories. When you put those two together, you get answers that are so much richer and more insightful.
So to put it a bit more formally, mixed methods research is a design that on purpose combines quantitative, the hard numbers, with qualitative data, like stories from interviews or observations. And by bringing them together in one study, you can understand your topic on a level that either method alone just can't reach.
Now, this is the key. The magic word here is integration. This is really the secret sauce of mixed methods. See, it's not just about grabbing two different kinds of data and sticking them in a report. It's about strategically making them talk to each other. It's how you make that blueprint and that interior design plan actually work together to create one unified vision. Okay, so let's get into our first major design type, sequential. And yeah, the name kind of gives it away. This is what you use when you're building your research in phases, where the results from the first step actually guide what you do in the second step. So you've got two main paths you can take here. With an explanatory design, you start big with quantitative data, the quan, and then you follow up with qualitative methods, the qual, to help figure out why you're seeing those numbers. But in an exploratory design, you just flip it. You start with qualitative exploration to really get a feel for a topic, and then you use those insights to build a really smart, targeted quantitative study.
And this breaks that explanatory process down perfectly. So let's say you run a huge survey and you find some really surprising statistical trend. The numbers are telling you what's happening, but they have no idea why. That's your cue. You then go out and do follow-up interviews to get the stories and the context behind that weird trend you found. Okay, but what if you don't have time to do things in phases? What if you need to work on the blueprint and the interior design at the exact same time? Well, that's where our next design, the convergent design, is a real game changer. So this is the convergent design. With this approach, you collect both your quantitative and your qualitative data simultaneously. You go off and analyze each set on its own, and then, and this is the crucial part, you merge the two sets of findings to create a single, really comprehensive interpretation of what's going on.
Now for something a little more specialized, the nested design. You'd use this when one method is clearly your main focus, but you need a little bit of targeted data from the other method to really flesh it out. Just think of it like a study within a study.
And this can work two ways. You could have a huge quantitative study, that's your main blueprint, but you nest a smaller, detailed, qualitative piece inside it to add some real depth, kind of like doing a deep dive on one critical room's design. Or you can do the reverse. Your main study could be qualitative, but you nest a small quantitative component inside it to give you some numbers to back up your findings. Okay, so you're the research architect. You've got these really powerful designs in your toolkit, sequential, convergent, and nested. The big question is, how do you pick the right blueprint for your specific project?
Well, the choice you make really depends entirely on what you're trying to achieve. And this table is your perfect guide. So if your goal is to explain some numbers you found, you're going to use an explanatory sequential design. If you need to build a great survey based on what you learned from interviews, you go with exploratory sequential. Need to merge two different data sets for one big picture? That's convergent. And if you just need to embed a small piece of data to support a larger study, you'll use a nested design. It really all comes down to the kind of integration your question needs.
You know, this quote just nails it.
The design you choose flows right from the relationship you want to create between your numbers and your stories. The absolute key is to decide what kind of story your research needs to tell, and then you pick the design that lets you integrate your data in the most powerful way to tell it. So, the main takeaway here is really clear. Mixed methods isn't just about using two different tools from your toolbox. It's about using them together with purpose to build a much stronger, more complete structure of understanding. So we'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you have the blueprints for these powerful designs, what are you going to build?